So hi everyone, and welcome to a session in Scylla Summit 2022, Scylla Cloud Simplified Deployment of the Public Cloud, or as I would like to call it, Scylla Cloud, the best database as a service out there for big data. And I will try to prove my bold claim in the next 15 minutes or so. I'm Zach Leviatan, VP Product of ScyllaDB, and I want to thank Adar, the Cloud Product Manager, for helping me prepare and create this deck. Adar was supposed to present this deck, was a little bit under the weather, so I'm taking his place. So let's get started. I already presented myself, so let's jump directly to the topic. So what is a ScyllaDB Cloud? So I'm assuming most of you are familiar with Scylla database, both the open source and the enterprise version of it. It's by now a well-known NoSQL database. Scylla Cloud is a database as a service offering of the same ScyllaDB, or if you want a cloud offering of this database. That means that it's a fully managed database on the cloud. It's hosted on both AWS and Google Cloud. And by fully managed, I mean it's completely supported by the Scylla Cloud team. I'm talking about a 24/7 monitoring, proactive support, rapid response, and everything that come with it. A bit of information I got from our VP solution that our average response time to critical issue is less than 8 minutes. So our team is really proactive in a sense that it's not only responding fast to tickets, it will also find about most of the issue before you do. And that's one of the advantages of using the expert on the database as your DBA. Scylla is a highly available database, and that's included for Scylla Cloud as well. You can run it on multi-data center, which usually mean multi-region on AWS or GCP. All deployment by default are multi-zone. The database as a service exists for more than 3 years, and by now we have hundreds of production clusters. We're managing 4 petabytes of data, and the numbers just keep growing and growing. And before I jump to the Scylla Cloud benefit, I want to try quickly give you a very quick demo on what Scylla Cloud means. So Scylla Cloud is the UX is not very fancy. You can see your active cluster, or you can launch a new cluster. As you can see here, I can choose AWS or Google. I can choose the region, and I can choose the instance type. We are supporting on AWS many instance type. Here it is. So for usually from the i3 family, so i3 to i3en, but also T3 micro. A very low cost instance, usually used for evaluation or functional evaluation. If you want to move to production, you need more than that. And you can choose the number of nodes, starting from 3 nodes. As we will see in a second, 3 nodes can already support huge amount of transaction per second or request per second, but you can actually start a much bigger cluster if you want to. I won't go and do it now because it's actually coming out of my personal credit card. So it might be a little bit expensive, but if you choose a small instance with not as much number of nodes, the number are lower. So here in my account, my personal account, I have 2 clusters right now. One of them is evaluation cluster, as I mentioned earlier, running on T3 micro. The second one is production cluster. Only 3 nodes, but it's a much bigger node. It's i3 16 extra large, and as you can see, this cluster support over 800 requests per second. The cluster is not fully loaded; it's only 60% load, probably because I didn't put enough loader machine to put traffic on it. And let me switch to the Grafana dashboard. For those of you using Scylla open source or enterprise, it's the same or very close monitoring stacks to what you are used to from Scylla Enterprise. You can see here, for example, this is the overview dashboard. We have many dashboards. As you can, so you can see here the average number of writes, average number of reads. let's see the last 3 hours, for example. Let's refresh it. Otherwise, the scale get distorted because it only shows the changes. Okay, this is more likely. You see over 400 write, over 400 reads. I want to mention the latency because I'm going to touch on it later. The tail latency of Scylla is very, very low, and that's applied for Scylla Cloud as well. So you can see here the 99% latency of write is a millisecond, of read it's 3 milliseconds. I can assure you that's the best latency that you will get on any database as a service out there. And don't take my words for it, I encourage you to go ahead and test it. So that's the overview dashboard. We have many other dashboards. I'm not going to deep dive into the monitoring stack right now, but just for your information, we have OS level metrics and CQL level metrics, DynamoDB API metrics, more and more dashboard. All the dashboards are available here, but I want to go back to the Scylla Cloud's benefit or value and why you should consider Scylla Cloud for your next project. So I broke the advantages to 4 on a very high level. And the first one, and maybe the most important, is price to performance. You already seen in this live demo a 3-node cluster that can run well over 800 requests per second. For those of you who can calculate quickly in your head, you can already evaluate that the price compared to other databases and service like DynamoDB or other is much lower, and I will show it in a graph later. I wrote here a fifth of the cost. Of course, it's vary, it can be lower, it can be higher than that. So that's one point. A second point is predictable low latency. I will touch on that later. Fully managed service. I already explained what it means, but it also means that we are doing all the operation like repair, backups, everything that come with it automatically, and developer friendly. And I'm going to touch on each of these 4 points in the next few minutes. So let's start with the price to performance ratio. So we have a tool called the pricing calculator, which we capture the current state of Scylla Cloud pricing as well as other cloud pricing, and you can interactively compare different use cases and see how much it would cost you on each of the cloud. In this case, the use case that I chose is 500,000 requests per second for read, 500,000 requests per write. The dataset, a small dataset of 20 terabyte. Of course, all the prices and the benchmark are a point in time, and the cloud prices do change. Not in Scylla, but on other cloud, they do change the price from time to time. And the benchmark result change depending on the use case. So I really encourage you not to take my word for the performance and pricing and measure it for yourself. You can have, even on Scylla Cloud or a specific database, you can have big changes between use case just by increasing the data size or the average item size, for example, from a kilobyte to megabyte. Of course, all the number would change. So I really encourage you to test with your own use case. I choose this specific use case, and this is a result I got for on-demand monthly cost for Scylla Cloud compared to DynamoDB, Astra, AWS Keyspace, which is, by the way, built on DynamoDB, and the latest offering from MongoDB, Atlas, a serviceless option. I took this option from Mongo because they provide per operation cost, which was easier for me to use. So it's very easy to see that Scylla Cloud, at least for this specific use case, is much cheaper than the other offering. Other offering are way more expensive. Again, might not be the case on all cases. For example, from the top of my head, I can tell you that if you have only few requests per second, DynamoDB probably will be less expensive than Scylla. But if you have thousands and millions of requests per second, the difference become bigger and bigger. In this case, it's pretty huge. Latency, I already mentioned latency is super important for us and for our customer. So this is from a benchmark that we did comparing Scylla to DynamoDB in different use case. DynamoDB, might be a little bit misleading because DynamoDB usually behave better than that. But still, I can absolutely guarantee you that Scylla latency would be much better than DynamoDB, both for P95 and P99. and I have here the link for the benchmark if you want to deep dive into these results. So we talked about performance and cost ratio. We talked about latency. Now I want to mention a little bit about security and the way that Scylla Cloud is architected. So the way that Scylla Cloud works, and this might be the same or different from your other database as a service, that on Scylla Cloud, each cluster or each database, if you will, get dedicated VM on the cloud, either AWS or GCP, and dedicated VM, dedicated storage, dedicated monitoring and admin stack. Everything is isolated, everything is dedicated, and this of course brings you great performance, but also very good security, because nothing is shared between the customers. So each customer have its own isolated environment, and of course it's much easier for us as administrators to secure this kind of deployment. We also have a SOC 2 Type 2 certificate for Scylla Cloud, and we are just in the last day of approving our ISO certificate as well, which was quite an effort. Scylla Cloud is very flexible and friendly. You already seen that I'm very easily can run a development cluster, a test cluster, a deploy cluster. This diagram shows 3 nodes, but our customer can actually run as many nodes as they want. Usually you don't need huge amount of nodes, just because Scylla is so efficient with big machines and the number of transactions it can support per node. But we do have customers that run, for example, in multiple data centers or region with more than 50 Scylla nodes across the globe. So a very flexible deployment and developer friendly. Why is it developer friendly? First, because it's compatible with 2 big or huge ecosystem in the database domain. One is Apache Cassandra, and the second one is DynamoDB. And when I say compatible, I mean compatible at the protocol level. That means that every driver and every tool that work with either Cassandra or DynamoDB will work seamlessly with Scylla. Also, maybe unlike other offering, we are fully compatible with the enterprise and open source Scylla in a way that we didn't put limitation on the way that you can use the cluster. So you can use multiple key space, multiple users, as many tables, materials, view, keys as you want to. Of course, each of the decision might have performance result, but we are not hard limiting you for a specific number of for example, tables or key spaces. And that means that you can use the power of Scylla, and as you can see, as you saw, Scylla have a lot of power. You can use it to provision more than one key space or more than one use case to the same cluster, and that might mean that when you have one type of use case down, the other type of use case will take advantage of that. And together with features that we call service level priority, this is super useful. I already mentioned driver compatibility. You also have tools like SQL tracing, the SQL dashboard in the monitoring that I showed earlier. Another tool, I do want to mention one specific tool for those of you who are looking to migrate to Scylla Cloud and you run either Scylla, Cassandra, or DynamoDB, and you want to migrate to ScyllaDB. There is a tool called a Scylla Migrator built on Spark, which will make it very easy for you to migrate, either from Scylla on-prem or other databases. So if you're interested, take a look and let me know if you have any question. Battery included monitoring stack. I already actually demo the monitoring stack, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I do want to mention that although we are offering this stack, you are not married to it, in a sense that you can use your own monitoring stack. There is a checkbox when you start a Scylla cluster on the cloud if you want to export the metrics or not. If you choose to export the metrics, you can integrate with external tools like Datadog or other monitoring stack, and by that you can consolidate more than one system to one monitoring dashboard, maybe your own data pipe, and you can also set up your own alerts, maybe to your own PagerDuty and such. So this is a popular option. Keep in mind that if you do work with external monitoring system, doesn't mean you cannot keep working with the Grafana dashboard. You can use both. It doesn't cost you anything to continue using both systems. Not in performance and not in actual cost. Bring your own account. Bring your own account is a very popular offering for our AWS users. By bring your own account, we mean that, let me just show the diagram, I think it's clearer. So with bring your own account, you are running the Scylla cluster on your own AWS account. The VM, the backups, everything run on your account, but it's still fully managed by the Scylla Cloud automation and the Scylla Cloud team. That means that we are giving you minimal access just to connect to the database over SQL or REST API for DynamoDB compatible. We are not really allowing you to do SSH into the machine or anything like that. That will make it very hard for us to support. So you have limited access to the database on just what you need, and we as Scylla Cloud have very limited access to your account to operate the nodes. We are asking for minimal permission, and the end result is that the cluster is still fully managed by us. We will outscale, downscale, do upgrades, whatever it takes, but not more than that. So the data never leave your account and your region, including for backups or anything like that. None of your data actually exposed to the Scylla backend. So everything stays on your account, and a lot of customers like this option. One reason is the security and the responsibilities that I mentioned earlier. The other one, that you pay for the VM directly to AWS. On some cases, customers prefer to do it this way. So bring your own account, very popular. Before we wrap up, I want to mention just two use cases of Scylla Cloud. A customer already mentioned that Scylla Cloud is a production environment for the last 3 years, and we have hundreds of clusters in production. One of our biggest and important customer is iFood in Brazil. It's a food delivery system. They move to ScyllaDB from DynamoDB. They actually have a longer journey from SQL to NoSQL. You can read more about it in the blog post. I have the link here. And by doing that, they save a lot of money and are able to run in a multi-region environment. So if you want to read more about them and other customer, look at our blog post. Another relatively old customer of Scylla Cloud is GamGam, a company that deploys Scylla cluster on a multi-region environment, and by that reduce the number of servers that they are using significantly, and of course the cost that associates with that. Just a quick wrap up of what we've seen so far. We've seen 4 advantages. A big advantage of Scylla Cloud. The first and the most important probably is the performance per cost ratio, which is the best in Scylla Cloud compared to other similar databases. The second one was the support, and then the user friendly and the latency. All of them I try to prove for all of these 4 categories that Scylla is superior to other databases, but the work of course is never done. And we actually have huge plan for Scylla Cloud for 2022. So we are planning to enhance usability and observability, integrate with more system. We are planning to add the long-awaited Cloud API that will allow you to control your cluster in a programmatic, secure way. We are adding a lot of features to Scylla itself, like the Raft consensus algorithm, and this will allow our cloud offering to become more elastic, in a sense that we can outscale and downscale much faster than what we can do right now. And we are adding more region and more zones all the time, close to the rate that the cloud provider adding them. Last thing I want to mention that we are expanding to new machine types, and we have another session in this summit with Ken Krupa from AWS presenting the latest and greatest EC2 instances, in particular the i4 instances. We got lucky, and AWS was kind enough to share a preview instance of i4 so we can test with it, and our preliminary test already shown that we can run twice the throughput on i4 compared to i3. So you can imagine that this automatically can translate to half the machine and half the price of what you're paying right now for the same throughput. So this is huge, and we are very excited about getting this i4 machine and adding them to Scylla Cloud once AWS will make them publicly available. And if you're interested to learn more about i4 and the new ARM instances, please check out the joint session with Ken Krupa. Very interesting stuff. And also thanks to Mikal for helping me benchmark, or not helping me, actually doing all the work in benchmarking the new AWS instances. And with that, I want to thank you guys. I put here a few useful resources for Scylla Cloud. You can use the free trial option if you want to jump on the wagon and just try testing with Scylla Cloud with no cost. Read more about Scylla Cloud in the documentation, see the benchmark, or do the university class about or lesson about Scylla Cloud. And please let me know if you have any question. So thank you very much.